Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Well, hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. You survived 2013, and we are on the dawn of 2014, which I don't know about you. I just feel like it is going to be such a much better year than 2013. But today, we're going to be speaking with Debra Clement, and she is going to tell us everything that's going to be coming up for 2014. So I recommend that if you're listening to the show, get a paper and a pen so you can take notes, because these shows, and that's why I have an astrologer come on every first weekend of the year, because they always provide so much insight into what's coming up. And I know I'll listen to what they're saying. I'm like taking copious notes. It's like, okay, these dates, watch out for that, look this up. And so I'm going to recommend the same to you. But don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can learn about all the products and services I offer. So it is a new year, and you just might need to have a psychic reading, or you might have a health issue going on and need a medical intuition evaluation. Check out the webpage, give me a call, drop me a note, and let's set something up, www.soulhealer.com. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. A couple of little announcements. Well, if you missed a show, please do go to the Just Energy Radio website, justenergyradio.com. Sign up for our weekly newsletter to keep you informed of who's coming up on the show. As of today, we have 6 full years of archives, because this is our 7-year anniversary. It's our 7th year of being online. Being dyslexic really sucks, because you can't figure out, is it 6 years? Is it 7 years? But this is our 7th year, the opening of our 7th year of airing this show. So, yay! All of those archives are available on the website, or you can check out our YouTube channel, Just Energy Radio on YouTube. But one of the other things that I wanted to mention is I have been a video making fool, making these little short videos that are like 10 minutes long, all with illustrations and music. They're really cool. And if you go to Science and Spirit Meet on YouTube, you can check out these videos. There's one on Rama's Bridge. There's one that I just posted today about the worldwide mysterious phenomena of elongated skulls. There's one on the law of attraction. Just a variety of different topics, just, 10 to 15 minutes long. You get to hang out with me. But if you go, subscribe to the channel, please. We'd love your support. One other thing, March 22nd through 30th, the Ancient Mysteries International is hosting the Ancient Mysteries International 14 Conference in Angkor Wat. It'll be Bruce Cunningham, Stephen Nash, Sasha and Janet Lesson, and myself. They have extended the discount ticketing for this all-inclusive trip, March 22nd through 30th. So for more information, to go to Angkor Wat in Cambodia, which is going to be so cool, go to ancientmysteriesinternational.com. God, I'm in a good mood today. Anyway, so today we're going to be speaking to a good friend and astrologer, Debra Clement. So let me tell you a little bit about Deborah and get her on the air. Debra Clement is an internationally known astrologer with more than 20 years of professional experience counseling clients from all walks of life. In addition to offering private consultations, Deborah publishes an astrology blog, teaches online astrology classes, and is the host of Anchored in Astrology, a popular weekly internet radio program that airs live every Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. noon, and can be heard anytime via podcast. And her website is anchoredinastrology.com. So please welcome Debra Clement. Hi, Deborah. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. I'm very happy to be here. I do have to just say one thing. The Anchored in Astrology, it's no longer live. It's still available, though, in iTunes. So I just didn't correct the bio there for you, but it is still out there. And I'm on the air once a month as the other half. I like to think the better half of He Says, She Says Astrology with Chris Flisher. So just will mention that. People can check my website. Okay?
Perfect. So, Deborah, last year, right around this time, we were, just coming out of like Happy Mayan Fool's Day. And I think, somebody had put that on Facebook and I'm like, I am so stealing that because it was too funny for me. And this show aired on December 21st, 2012. And we did a show that was called What Were You Doing While the World Was Coming to an End? It seemed appropriate. But I feel like, at this time last year, just having passed that, the world was kind of taking a sigh of relief, whether or not you believed the world was coming to an end. But there was this little unconscious, what if it happens? What if, the economy turns upside down? What if a meteor crashes? I mean, there were all these what ifs, even if you really didn't believe that it was going to happen on December 21st, 2012. From your position, how was 2013? I mean, did we move through the transition? Are we on the other side of the great turmoil and working our way to a positive future? Or was it not so much?
I think this 2013, we were right in the thick of it, of the turmoil. When it came to, it's interesting with the Mayan, the Mayan calendar, I think there was also a little bit of, I'm going to say disappointment, because a lot of people looking to 2013 like it was going to be this new shift that we were really going to feel. And it really didn't feel that way, I think, for most people, certainly not for my clients, certainly not for myself. And my feeling is, astrologically speaking, 2013, I think, was a very bumpy ride. And I will say for most people, can't speak for all people, sure, many have thrived and done well. But what happened is in 2013, I think there were two main things going on. One is that we were, first of all, it goes actually to 2012. When we finished up 2012, and like you said, we all, had this sigh of relief. But we came in after a tough ending to the year. Saturn had moved into Scorpio. We had the eclipse. There was hurricane or superstorm. I think they called it Sandy. So we came into the new year a little bit demoralized. I'm going to say a little bit beaten up. The Newtown massacre. I mean, all those events happened at the end. And we get into 2013, and you want to have this fresh start and breathe nice and easy. And here's this strong, again, I'm going to say scorpionic energy. Saturn's in Scorpio. Now, Saturn, is a good planet. It's connected to definition, but it's also about, we'd say, limitation. Scorpio is about rebirth, and that sounds really good. The only thing is, to have a rebirth, something like has to die, right? And that's about the Saturn. Scorpio was very much about purging this year. It was a heavy energy, I think, throughout that most people felt. And at the same time, we had what we call these transiting squares, Uranus and Pluto, we call them the clash of the Titans, not getting along at all in the heavens. And that's part of what coincided with a lot of, I don't want to call it the crazy weather, but we had these earthquakes, these tsunamis, the tornadoes in terms of the weather. And so it was a heavy, I'm going to say it was just really a heavy atmosphere. The other thing with Saturn in Scorpio, and not to take away from the Uranus and the Pluto, is that Saturn in Scorpio is very much connected to things like about taxes, the IRS, along that line. And 2013, certainly in the U.S., we had a lot of issues in terms of scandals. Saturn defining what's going on here, Pluto, what isn't working so well, what was going on behind the scenes that we certainly came out. We also had, with the Uranus and Pluto squares, because I'm just going to speak on that, it's about transformation. I mean, that's the purpose of Uranus and Pluto. They're doing battle, but they're both. It's gotten to a whose side are you on, but that's not what it's supposed to be because they're both planets that are extreme. Pluto is about transformation, and that's really good. And Uranus is about awakening, and that's really good. But when they're clashing in the signs as they are at this time, Pluto's in Capricorn, Uranus is in Aries. Well, Pluto in Capricorn is a bit, I'm going to say, dictatorial. And if, again, look at 2013, just as the big headlines, the spying, the drones, again, I'm going to say the IRS scandals. And then we've got Uranus in Aries. And, Uranus in Aries, it's in the sign of the warrior. It's also the sign of the entrepreneur, right? Yeah, entrepreneurial. And Uranus in Aries, think about cyber warfare. Okay, besides the Target breach, which was like the second biggest breaches there were, Uranus and Aries, think of social media, because Uranus rules the internet. And all they call it bullying, but I mean, you have people committing suicide. It's really more like, intentional infliction of emotional distress. But what's going out there on the internet, we dealt with a lot of those issues as well in the headlines in 2013. So just looking at the broad picture of what we heard just listening to the news, even if you don't listen to the news that often, you just see a headline here or there. It was a very heavy year.
But with weird stuff, I mean, some of the stuff that, I recall, you're talking about the bullying and, the football team that got brought up for charges for bullying because they beat the crap out of another team. It's like, really?
Well, I'm going to tell, and with no disrespect meant, to anyone, but sometimes when I read these things, I think to myself, oh my God, how did I grow up the way I did? Because, it's clearly we were all, bullied in the schoolyard, so to speak. But that's the bit about the extremes. We've gone from one extreme to another, where certainly you have to treat people well. But we've gotten to the point in 2013 where it's like, you couldn't say anything. The least little thing, that wasn't politically correct, made the headlines. And that's why I say these are two planets that are considered planets of extreme. And any extreme is just not healthy. It's really about finding the balance.
Was the George Zimmerman case this year, too? I mean, I know it went into this year, but did it start this year also? Do you recall?
George Zimmerman, the trial was this year. It actually happened, that was, I believe, the end of, I think that was 2012 at the end, because then it waited to go to trial quite some time. And that also, I think, I'm going to say very scorpionic, very Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto is about control. Capricorn's, for instance, it's a government. It's big business. And so since Pluto went into Capricorn way back in 2008, we've seen a transformation within the government. We're seeing this transformation of I'm going to say, when I say big business, we had the bailouts. Pluto's in charge of bankruptcy, the banking reforms, all of those scandals. Pluto's in Capricorn. It breaks down and then it rebuilds. Now, also 2008, now President Obama was elected that year. And he came in promising, right, to transform the government compared to, let's say, under the Bush years. Didn't quite work out that way, but came in. No, and no disrespect. I know people get annoyed when I say that, but the record speaks for itself because, one of the complaints by many people under the Bush administration was it was becoming like totalitarian, right? The Patriot Act, we were losing our rights. And if you really look at the facts in the years since President Obama's taken office, it hasn't all been relaxed. Some things have even gotten tighter. So that's why I say, and that's Pluto in Capricorn. You have to watch Pluto in Capricorn because its natural tendency is to dictate and control.
Well, I'm glad that that's not in my chart. And I would assume that for some people, those feelings or those energies are going to be more intense based on where different planets are in their particular chart at any given moment as well.
Absolutely. And that's a point I do want to make because a lot of times there'll be articles out there and you'll talk about, especially Uranus and Pluto. And my God, this clash of the Titans, and it sounds really terrible. The truth of the matter is, is what does Uranus in Aries and Pluto in Capricorn at a particular degree, how is it influencing your chart? Because I'm going to say, if you happen to be, a Taurus or a Virgo, and right now your sun, let's say your sun sign Virgo, and your sun is around 10 degrees of Virgo, Pluto is absolutely loving you and is really helping you make positive changes in your life. And it's the same thing with Uranus and Aries. If you're a Leo, again, right today I'd say about 8 degrees, born maybe around August 3rd. Uranus is really giving you a boost. It's awakening you. It could be liberating you, bringing something new into your life. So it really always depends on what the planets are doing in the heavens. Yes, that's the big picture, but really how are they affecting your chart? Because again, Uranus in Aries, when it entered in 2010, right, it's about innovation. That's the year that Apple introduced the iPad. Now, there had actually been tablets introduced before the iPad, but 2010, the iPad, came out, and I'll say the rest is history, right? Mm-hmm. So there's always there's a good side. Sometimes there's that shadow side. But the point is, when you have Uranus and Pluto in this clash or this combination, and it's a very volatile energy, it's really it's a catalyst for change. And it's not an easy transformation. That's why, I always say with Pluto, we like to use the word transformation, which is a nice way of many ways saying, like, we're going to pulverize it. We're going to just, get rid of it. We're going to kill it off. But it is about destroying, but then there is a rebirth.
And it could be, when you say rebirth, can you explain that a little bit? Because I think,
Sure.
A lot of people kind of take it a little over the top, maybe.
No, really, what the rebirth is really, it's about letting go. What is no longer working, whether it's for us as a nation or you're a person on an individual life. There are things sometimes we hang on to because we're used to them. They're a habit or they're so familiar. And it's really holding us back because it's stale. And we can really fight and try to hold on to it, right, for dear life. But eventually, it's about letting it go. And maybe you're going to mourn it. Maybe you're going to feel bad about it, because you're really attached to it. But let it go, and you're creating a void so that something better can come in. And that's the rebirth, that path of where you're supposed to be. Or if it's a relationship, the person you're supposed to be with, making room for that person to come into your life.
So it's kind of like doing house cleaning, like how they say if you, empty the stuff out of your closet or, purge through that stuff, there's more room for you to go shopping and bring new stuff in.
That's why you got to get rid of the clutter. Absolutely. And so we clutter our lives, even with relationships with people, things that don't serve us well. And historically speaking, because cycles do repeat themselves historically, and they certainly do astrologically. So when we look back over the years, let's say when Uranus and Pluto had prior clashes, even if it wasn't the exact same aspect, one time was around the 1930s. So we had the Depression, right? We hit bottom. And we rebuilt. It didn't happen overnight, but we rebuilt. In the 60s, we had Uranus and Pluto. It was a different connection. We called it a conjunction. The energies were combined. But we had our civil rights movement. We had the feminism. I can't get that out. My God, I've got to get a
girl power.
Feminist, girl power, yes, burning the bras and all of that back then in the 60s. And so they're radical planets. And that's why I say they're radical planets, they're extreme planets, and they do bring extreme change. So whenever you have that type of energy, to say it's uncomfortable is an understatement, but there's a purpose for it, and it's really about clearing out what doesn't serve the purpose anymore.
But that would be for the energy or dynamic of whatever sign it's in, correct? The dynamic of the planet, Uranus and Pluto, don't change. The signs that they're in do make a difference. And in this case, where we are right now, present time, we've got Uranus in Aries, which is very much about initiative and new starts, and again, I'm going to say birth and all that. And Pluto is in Capricorn, so it really is very much a time of reorganizing. I'm going to say the top. So you could look at the government, certainly. You can look at big business. Capricorn is about authority, and that's what the clash is right now. The clash of authority, and we're very. In the U.S. especially, it's a very polarized nation.
Especially, and you see this in the media. When I was growing up, I mean, you had, maybe your liberal outlet or your conservative outlet, but you had a lot of what I really called journalism, fair reporting. There's much more editorializing today. So it's almost like, what channel do you watch? It's kind of like, which side are you on? And that's the
Well, there's only one side. Come on.
Whatever side you happen to be on, right?
No, the one that they tell you that you're on, and you're just supposed to go, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and that's what's happened. But that's what's happened in the recent years in that journalism. We've seen that change where we've got, again, they're telling you there's more censorship now, and that's part of this whole Uranus Pluto, I'm going to say, conflict as well, is breaking through that. Because I sometimes say, when did that start? When did that start?
The 1940s would be my guess. And I have a very specific reason for saying that. I do a lot of research, and I read a lot of books. I have been reading a lot of books that were written in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And basically, because I'm looking at mythology, and that's when a lot of scientists, I guess, were going into indigenous cultures and documenting the culture and their mythology, and they were like the first ones into a group, that kind of thing. And so that's when a lot of that material was written down. But the way they write, now you can tell when they're, it's like they'll talk about, well, these primitives, but you can kind of separate out their personal beliefs from them documenting the facts, where by the end of the 30s, there was a really big change in the kind of material that was put out. A big change. And I found it very interesting that it became more opinionated and less factual, or I don't know. It really, there was a big change. So that was my guess.
I feel in the past few years, the past 5 to 10 years, I'll say easily 10 years, and on the political level, on the political reporting, I think it's become more editorialized in their opinions than it has been a little bit more. I hate to use the word, I don't want to use that phrase, fair and balanced, but I'm going to say what I used to consider really journalism, that just, here are the facts, let's give the facts, you form your own opinion. I mean, they always influenced, a little bit. And the other thing going on with, and I want to talk about Uranus, Uranus is also the planet that rules anarchy, protests. And so when Uranus and Pluto here at odds, we're talking also about a protest against, and I'm going to say against authority. Obviously, the government is one authority, but against authority. I don't want to say we're not taking it anymore, but people are becoming more vocal. They're not happy. We're seeing the more protests, like the Wall Street. Remember, I can't think of the name of that either. And I'm here in New York, and we had all the protesters there. Every single day. That was very much Uranus and Aries squaring Pluto and Capricorn.
We're going to come back to that. I'm going to make a little note.
Okay.
When we get into a little more of the political stuff, because I feel like, if that's an energy that's going to be following us into 2014, when we talk about some of the topics in the political portion, that will be a question.
Okay. The other thing I'm going to say about Saturn being in Scorpio for 2013, and again, looking at the big picture, when we talk about Saturn, I think about definition and in that role, Saturn's role for that. Scorpio is a financial sign. It usually represents what we call shared resources, like marital resources. And so if you look at 2013, now looking backwards, the states, the Supreme Court rulings in terms of same-sex marriage, where those financial benefits in many cases, certainly on the federal level, have been extended. And so just as a general sense of an energy to see where an influence comes through. Also, Scorpios are much about bankruptcy. It's about what they would call the entitlements. It's also Social Security. It's connected to some degree to health insurance. And certainly 2013 was certainly characterized, right? That was a running theme for the whole year with the Affordable Care Act. And how it's going to be paid for. Who's going to be enforcing it? Oh, the IRS. And the IRS is ruled by Scorpio. And Saturn is authority. So these were a lot of the themes for really when you think of 2013, including the scandals involved with with Lois Lerner and all those things going on. But it was very much in the headlines of the news.
So how is 2014 seeming? I'm like, oh, please say it's going to be a little bit better.
The first half of the year, and I will say in general sense, I think is going to be not quite as, the second half is better. Let me put it that way. The second half, I think, in many ways is better. The first half, I still think, is a little bit dicey. We're still coming out of 13. We still have a bit of this energy. Let me say the Uranus-Pluto energy that I'm referring to actually finishes finally in 2015. So we're almost done with it. Okay, we're almost finished. The thing about 2014 is that we're dealing with this Uranus-Pluto square, and it's a volatile energy. It affects, and it does manifest the weather. And that's what I say. So I would say for 2014, in terms of the weather, the tornadoes or the extreme weather, I think we can expect certainly to continue to see that. There's also going to be a April, and I just want to say in particular for everyone, April of 2014, I think, is a month really to watch in terms of any kind of volatility. Personally, it's not the time I would want to travel overseas, okay, because I just feel it's going to be such a volatile time. We have eclipses that month as well. So April, I think, can be kind of rough. And when we get to the political part of it, I'll talk a little bit more about that in April. And the thing is, as we started this year, there's the planet Venus stationed retrograde on December 21st. And when we say a planet is moving retrograde, it appears to be moving backwards in the sky. And of course,
Wait. Yeah. Venus retrograde? Now, I think everybody listening to my show is familiar with Mercury retrograde and how, you have to put insulation on your computer and don't touch your light switches because they'll blow up. But I've never really heard of Venus retrograde.
Yeah, everyone knows about Mercury retrograde because I would say we astrologers do a good job of promoting that one 3 to 4 times a year. Venus moves retrograde only once about every 18 months. So it's about every year and a half. And no, it doesn't. And it doesn't get quite as much, let's say, attention or press. But what happens is, so it appears to be moving backwards, even though it's not, and it goes roughly 6 weeks. And so from December 21st past to January 31st of this year, I'm going to say Venus is moving retrograde. It happens to be in the sign of Capricorn. The significance of this, and this can influence everyone. It doesn't matter what sign you are or what your chart looks like. These are just some general principles that really apply to everyone. Is when you're talking about a retrograde, we talk about using the energy, we're looking inward. Venus represents relationships. Now, people generally tend to think of love when they think of the relationships in Venus, and that certainly is up there at the top of the list. But it's all one-on-one relationships. So it could be even business relationships. It could be your best friend. So it's a time when Venus is moving retrograde that sometimes relationships may hit a bump in the road. It's not that the Venus retrograde is causing it, okay? It's that the Venus retrograde energy is making you aware of the relationship, because it's really about what do you value? What do you need in a partner? What do you need in a friend? Venus does double duty in the horoscope, and so it also represents money. So at the same time, when Venus is, we say, moving retrograde, money sometimes become an issue. The rule of thumb is we'll say do not purchase. Avoid purchasing, let's say, big ticket items or luxury items while Venus is retrograde, because you may not be that satisfied with them later on, all right? Or we say hold your receipt because you just may feel like, I'm a little disappointed later on. And I've bought, and I have to say, the thing is, when I say a luxury item, I want to be clear and say anything that's not necessary, because it's not necessarily, you may not view it as a luxury item, but if it costs a lot of money and you don't need to do it for the purpose of Venus retrograde, I'm going to say it does count. But in the relationships, though, and I will say, and I think this is where most people do experience it, is it's really a time, and I would say for anyone, to look at your relationships, okay? Look at are there boundary issues? Because, Venus, in her role as a ruler of Taurus, can be kind of possessive, even a bit jealous, to be honest. So it might be a good idea to look and say, wow, are there any control issues? Venus, as the ruler of Libra, she loves to be popular. She'll over accommodate. So that's why I say, are there relationships in your life that maybe are one-sided? This might be the time to actually take out the scorecard, so to speak, and see, do you need to establish some boundaries? So it is common for people to, I'm going to say, second guess relationships while Venus is retrograde, but it's actually really healthy to do so. And it's often, Venus retrograde has a reputation for being associated with disappointment and with relationships or love. And again, it's not the retrograde that causes it. It's really the energy. It just lets us see if we've had some doubt or confusion. It really offers us the opportunity, to take a look at it and really, discover the answer. Of course, the key is you have to be willing to face the answer, embrace the answer, right? Because it's not really just about the other person. It always comes back. But it always comes back to us. Maybe we've outgrown the relationship. So Venus moving retrograde. It's also a time when sometimes people will seek solace in retail therapy. And again, you can end up overspending. So that's another little warning that we will say when it comes to Venus retrograde. Traditionally, you might read, don't get engaged during Venus retrograde. You know what? And that's why I say it's not going to sink your relationship. Only the two of you can do that. But Venus retrograde is not going to do it. And sometimes it brings, we hear from old lovers or people from our past. And it can really be, sometimes you don't want to hear from them. But other times it could be really good because it may be an opportunity to, to revisit it and get closure. So it's a good, we say don't make commitments. I will say that if you're in a relationship while Venus is retrograde, we'd say wait till it goes direct. You'll see things more clearly. Plastic, or I should say cosmetic surgery. That's what they call it now, right? Cosmetic surgery. As a rule, Venus retrograde, we advise as astrologers not to make any radical changes in your appearance because, again, you may not be that satisfied with it. You need to get a trim for your hair, that's fine. You want to go from brunette to blonde, I would wait till Venus is direct before I did that.
Well, I mean, but at least you can fix that. Getting a boob job, that's
that's a whole different story. Yes,
but that would, I guess, fall into the luxury category.
Well, I think for most people, absolutely, that would be right. The luxury category. So
let me ask you a question with the Venus retrograde. Because you're talking a lot about relationships and making changes or looking at. So let's say you're looking at your relationship space and you see some stuff that maybe you're not liking so well. Are there other planets that are in action right now that will support your ability to communicate to your partner or to, be able to implement some of the things that you might be seeing in that space?
I have to say it will depend on the individual's chart. Okay. Yeah, it will depend on the individual's chart, but it is the opportunity, yes, to address it. And listen, it may turn out that that's what the issue is. It's, oh my God, we don't communicate that well. And so it's something to work on. But it does give the opportunity to really, like I said, sort of take a step back and to look at it. And, if you meet somebody brand new and it's Venus retrograde, we'll always say, again, don't make a commitment until after it's direct. But the retrograde only lasts about 6 weeks. It's certainly not forever. And some of us, like myself, I was born when Venus is retrograde. So I live with that energy I've lived with the energy my whole life. And so it's about really being very, it's about looking inward and really seeing, it's a mirror, the whole relationship of being the mirror of what do we attract and what are we attracted to. It's about your needs. I think that's the best way to put it because I always say this, wants can be compromised, but needs have to be met. And a lot of times we know what we want, or at least we think we know what we want. We don't always know what we need.
But wouldn't that, and I'm going to kind of shift it here, but wouldn't that really be about our relationship with ourselves and skip everybody else? And can that fall into this category as well?
Absolutely, because really the bottom line is it starts with us, and we use the word self-esteem or self-love, which actually is something else that Venus, okay, is in charge of, so to speak, which has to do with self-love. And that we put that under sort of the values as well, but that includes valuing yourself, because what energy are you putting out there? And again, what are you attracting in?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because my motto the last couple of weeks has been foundation, foundation, foundation. It's like, what do I need to basically get my life in order to start the new year off right? And to me, the new year really doesn't start till Monday, because it's a midweek thing, and it doesn't start till Monday. And so the last week and a half, last week and then this week, I've just been busting butt, lining things up so that Monday it can open up the new year with a fresh start.
And that's a great way to start this year. It's a wonderful way.
One of the things that you had mentioned to me that I don't really understand the significance, but, I kind of looked it up online a little bit, but I was running out of time to really read anything. But that was about having a new moon on January 1st.
Yeah, that was exciting, because I think the last time we've had a new moon on January 1st was about I think it was 19 years ago. Pretty sure that's what it was, 19 years ago. So it's just, we have a new moon every month, and actually this month we have two, because we'll have another one on January 30th. There's a new moon in Aquarius. But we have the new moon, and every month we look forward to it. It's a new moon, right? New beginnings, initiation. But having it on the first of the year was just so wonderful, because what a great way. A new moon, right? A new beginning, new fresh year. This particular new moon that occurred on January 1st was in Capricorn.
A lot of action going on in Capricorn.
Yeah, I was going to say there are actually 5 planets in Capricorn in that new moon. So yeah, a lot of Capricorn energy going on there. But as much as it was a concentrated energy in Capricorn, it was I hate to use the word a harsh new moon, but the new moon itself was sort of under fire. It was part of what we call a cardinal cross. And Uranus, Pluto, and Jupiter was sort of, I don't want to say they were all ganged up on it, but it made a cross. It's a very strong energy. It's a tension-producing energy. Now, there is a good side to that. No, but there is a good side to that. I know you're thinking,
I just am going, no wonder why I was such a bitch.
And the reason being is that, first of all, to have all change in our life, right, when you think about it, really all change comes from some level of dissatisfaction, right? If I look at my wall and I say, I'm tired of that white wall, I'm going to, paint it lavender. It doesn't mean I hate the white wall, but I am dissatisfied with looking right at that white wall, because maybe it shows the dirt or something. And so I'm going with the lavender. And so when we have this dissatisfaction or this tension, that's what motivates us usually to act. When we are feeling good, we can just sort of, I'm not saying sit there on the couch and watch TV, but you can just sit there and you may procrastinate or you don't take as much action. So having this new moon that I'm going to say was in a highly motivated new moon in Capricorn, which is a sign of achievement. All right. And so it's what we call a cardinal sign. It's an action-oriented sign. And so for everyone in general, this new moon in Capricorn, it's a time to look at this year. And if you're setting your intentions, it really is about what do you want to achieve? And it doesn't have to necessarily, of course, be something practical or something material, but it's really about what do you want to achieve? And I'm going to say for the coming year, Pluto is involved in this new moon, and so is Mercury. And to me, that really gave it a strong sense of, I'm going to say, determination, concentration, focus. And that's how I looked at the new moon. I felt it was a very motivated new moon, very focused, and it's a time, we're still within the new moon energy, to sit down and really look ahead and write down the intentions, especially the most important things that you'd like to accomplish during this year.
Well, I guess I was right on track. And I'm not going to say what I was doing, but I wasn't very nice about it. I mean, I was nice in the best way I could amongst the tension and the, yeah.
But
that.
there was a lot of, no, there is, I'm going to say it was like a tense new moon, and Mars was involved as well. And that's where you, the little, irritableness came from, probably, is Mars.
Yeah, it was pretty blunt. I had a blunt new moon. That might be a better way of saying it. Not so bitchy, just, here it is.
Well, one could look at this new moon, honestly, and consider it to be, I'm going to say, an explosive new moon, which I think is a little too harsh, to be honest with you. But it was a powerful new moon, but you've got a lot of energy that can be used very constructively. When people achieve things, and I just want to say, like, if you happen to look at a chart of someone when they win an Oscar, let's say, or they have some tremendous breakthrough, or they launch something big, there's always what we call these hard energies, these tension-producing energies that you might look at another time and think, oh my God, what stress are they going to be on? How upsetting is it going to be? And you have to remember stress, and I think of this all the time. Believe me, if I looked at a lottery ticket and I had like the Mega Millions, 6 numbers or whatever that is, you can bet my blood pressure would be up and I'd be feeling stressed. It'd be a wonderful stress. It'd be an amazing stress because I don't buy those tickets, so it would really be a miraculous one. But the point is, it's really about tension can actually serve us very well. It's motivating. It's not always a negative tension.
Yeah. Well, I think having tension in your life is good because it does make you get up off the sofa and go do things.
Yeah. So. Certainly we need our periods of contentment as well and ease, but it's something that not to always look at it, because people very often look at things like, oh my God, what's going to happen, some kind of catastrophe. No, it can absolutely be wonderful. This is, like I say, this is when you win the Grand Slam. This is when you get your Oscar. You've got Saturn or some planet, hitting your 10th house of fame. Is a really stressful energy. That's when it happens.
So, one of the things that, we talked, we didn't really talk about it, but that happens, throughout the year is those dreadful Mercury retrogrades, or, actually, sometimes they're not that bad, and sometimes they're awful. But any insights as to the nature of, when they're coming up this year and the nature? I would think that where they're retrograding is going to have some kind of difference in the energy we're going to experience.
Yeah, what's going to happen is this year we have Mercury is retrograding. The air signs are getting their turn. And so the first retrograde to come up in 2014 will be February 6th through February 28th. So if anybody wants to mark that date down, I'm just going to give the dates. The second one is June 7th to July 1st. And the last one is October 4th to October 25th. So they're going to be retrograding in Aquarius, then in Gemini, then in Libra. And so I personally feel that the air signs, I just like it better, the energy, but my chart is more compatible. So that's what I want to say, is that if they're retrograde in the air signs, and the air signs are compatible because let's say you've got a lot of fire or you have air in your chart, you may have a much easier time because Mercury will be making easier contacts to your chart. But if Mercury, let's say it's in Aquarius, I'm just going to say, and your planets are in Taurus, and it's clashing with it, then that retrograde may be a little bit tougher, or a little bit more of an annoyance is how I like to think of Mercury. But if you are in a Virgo, a Gemini, or a Virgo or Gemini rising, it does tend to. It seems like Mercury does not treat its children any better, than anybody else. There's a target. In fact, to be honest, it seems to be a little bit more of a target on your back.
Well, glad neither of those are me.
But the good thing I will say about, because there is a good side to Mercury retrograde, and I know we do think about the miscommunications, right? And certainly we think about, oh God, the travel delays, because that's something else that usually goes on. But it is a really good time for research, and it's an excellent time if you want to find something out, especially if it's kind of like a secret or the information is kind of confidential. The time to ask the questions is during Mercury retrograde. You'd be surprised the information. It's just people don't find it. They don't find it as easily to keep secrets, and people tend to show their true colors during Mercury retrograde. So I would say that's why anytime if you watch the news, and sometimes you know how things are set off mic, like they don't know right that the mic is hot and they're go on speaking. And if it's Mercury retrograde and that happens and it says, oh, it's Mercury retrograde and they were caught off mic, whatever they said, take that to the bank because they're showing their true colors.
Huh.
So think before you speak. Well, right? While Mercury is retrograde.
Really? So let's see.
Yeah.
So are there any major transits coming up this year that we should be concerned about, or, you know, big planetary changes that are coming up that we should be concerned about?
Well,
and just to let you know,
yeah.
here, let me say this. Here, we're talking to Debra Clement. Her website is anchoredinastrology.com. And isn't she wonderful? So, you know, you need to get a chart done and, you know, contact her.
Well, thank you.
2012. Anyway.
Well, yeah.
So we have 15 minutes before the top of the hour, and I just wanted to give you a little heads up on that.
I appreciate that. The first thing I would like to mention, because this is a significant transit, is Mars. On December 7th, Mars entered the sign of Libra. Now, Mars travels through the zodiac, usually stays in each sign about maybe 10 weeks. And in this case, Mars is in the sign of Libra from December 7th to July 25th. It's like almost 8 months. And the
How
reason
does it get to stay there? Is it doing like some weird retrograde?
Yes,
something?
bingo.
Ooh.
Bingo, yes. So Mars stations retrograde or moves retrograde once just roughly every 2 years. And so it takes about 22 months really to get through the whole zodiac. So what'll happen is it is going to be retrograde from March 1st to May 19th. And it's going to be, again, retrograde in Libra. Now, there are two things going on. The fact that Mars is in Libra for so long is important because here's Mars, okay? Mars is the planet of, I always say, I, me, me, me. It rules Aries. And it's in the sign of Libra, which is the sign that lives to please the other person. So it's not exactly the most comfortable fit for Mars in that respect, okay? So there's some lessons here to learn, and that's why there is a focus for everyone on relationships in 2014. And so with Mars being in Libra in the general sense for everyone, it's a theme of, I'm going to say, balance, the I versus the we, how much do I give, how much do I take? And also, you know, Mars is about anger, okay? It's passion, it's ambition, it's anger, but I'm going back to the anger, the aggression. And so in particular, from March 1st to May 19th, this is a time for everyone to take a look and think, how do you handle anger? Now, you may be great. You may not need anger management. I don't mean that. But do you need to take a bigger stand for yourself? Because maybe some people have a hard time, you know, really being assertive or being aggressive. This is a time to look at that maybe and to work on it. On the other hand, are you overly aggressive? Are you too demanding? That's something else to consider. Mars is a very ego-driven planet. And it does rule courage and it does rule initiative. But between March 1st and May 19th, it is not considered, okay, an optimum time for elective surgery because there's a connection to surgeons. I mean, if you have to have surgery, you have surgery. Obviously, life doesn't stop for it. And it's also not the time, I say, don't buy gym equipment. It's not the time to start an exercise regimen because Mars is connected to physical vitality. Not as likely to stick with it, okay? And so it's also very much Mars. There was one other thing I wanted to mention about Mars, launching a new enterprise or a new business. If the date's set and you're locked in, you know, again, it's not going to be fatal to it. But ideally speaking, because every time you launch something, you open a new business, that has a birth chart. And so ideally it'd be nice not to have Mars moving backwards since it is the planet of energy and drive and ambition in the chart. So we do say to try to avoid starting anything new during that time. Also check, before it goes retrograde, check your batteries. Okay, check your batteries in your smoke detectors, in your carbon monoxide detectors. If you can check your car battery. The last time Mars was retrograde, that's when I went to the parking lot to get my car. Battery was dead. Anything to do with power, motors, ignitions along that line, check them out. Because that's when they may be likely to punk out on you.
But, I'm kind of feeling a little screwed, Deborah, because in my chart, I have Libra rising and an Aries moon. And so what, I'm going to be fighting with myself? I mean, is this going to be a really tough March through May, or will it be actually maybe a little easier because I have all of that stuff already kind of going on?
Well, you, to some degree, you live with that energy, so you're familiar with it. The other side of it, though, is that you may, if there's work that you need to do, and that's how I'll put it, you may find yourself in situations that will give you an opportunity, I like to say, to grow and learn. I mean, negatively, you can feel like, well, I don't need to be tested anymore. I thought I passed this course. But you can come through the other person. Do I feel that it's going to be terrible? No, and that's the thing about astrology, is that we have these energies, and they do influence us. But the free will, because there is free will, how do we deal with it? And so that's why I say that the choice is always ours. It's just an awareness, and that's what this is about, to say, you know what? These are some of the things that you can look at. And again, even ambition. Some people may need to step it up. Maybe somebody procrastinates, and this is something that they can become aware of during this time.
But you were talking about the I versus
yeah.
the we. Mm-hmm. So would it be a good time to look at create, not maybe getting married, but creating some kind of a partnership or doing things where, there's a collective, or would that just be a bunch of egomaniacs trying to get together?
During the retrograde period in particular, I think you can negotiate it, so to speak. I wouldn't make the commitment during Mars retrograde. I'll be honest. I would wait for it to go direct, but I think you can uncover a lot of motivation, because I do feel during the retrograde periods, the truth comes out. I do feel we show again, not just the Mercury retrograde, we do show our true colors a little bit easier.
So it sounds like we're going to be in one retrospective period right into another retro, so we're going to have 1 week in February, everybody, that if you're going to get like plastic surgery done or buy a big ticket item, so what's that week before, we hit all this other stuff?
February 1st to February 5th, and even there we can talk about shadows. No, it is, and that's why I say, and we had this several years ago too, so it's sort of a sluggishness to the energy, which is maybe a little, that's the kind of word I'm going to use. Things can sometimes seem to be dragging a little bit for us, so the patience sometimes needs to come into play. But I do believe this, that when we have these retrograde periods, or if we're being slowed down, it is for a purpose, because we are supposed to learn something from it. We're really not supposed to just, oh my God, feel like we're being tortured, which sometimes, of course, we do. But it really is about the opportunity, and it doesn't come around that often, thank goodness. But it does give us that opportunity. And even with Mars, like with health or exercise, it may not be the time to start the plan, to actually go to that gym. But with the retrograde, it might be the time to really think, okay, I really need to exercise. I really despise exercise. Is there some type of an activity though that's physical that I would enjoy? Maybe I like dancing, and that could give me the exercise. So that's why I say the time for any kind of a research could be really good.
Okay. So when is this all going to lighten up? And is there going to, you were talking about the second half of the year being better. So what's going on then? Can we just fast forward and skip the first half?
Oh, don't you wish
do a little time warping?
Yeah, but then we wouldn't learn the lessons we're supposed to learn, right? Yeah, well, first of all, what's going to make the second half better is that these retrogrades are behind us, especially the Venus and the Mars, because Mercury, we live with a couple of times a year. And so that to me is, and that's really going to make a big difference, because it's going to feel lighter. It's going to feel like things are moving much quicker. The other thing that's going to make the difference of the second half being better, and I do want to say we have eclipses. We've had eclipses. A series started this past fall, and one in particular was on October 18th, and it was 25 degrees of Aries. And what happens is on April 15th, which is tax day, right? I think here in the U.S., we will have one at 25 degrees of Libra. And, these eclipses have been pretty powerful. They've been really strong. This month is a midpoint for them. The full moon, I will say this, of January 15th, there's a full moon at 25 degrees of Cancer. It's all at that 25-degree mark. And so for some people, and again, it's going to depend on the chart, these eclipses may have thrown some people for a loop because eclipses can really change your life very quickly, bring different situations in, very often for good too, by the way. I don't want just to sound like it's something negative. But what's happening is in April, we will have an eclipse on April 15th. We will have a new moon solar eclipse in Taurus on April 29th. But that is also the month that we are having this transiting cardinal square with Uranus. We've got Pluto. We've got Mars involved. Jupiter's going to be there a bit. It's a very volatile energy going on, and it's a particular I'm going to say configuration that's hitting the charts of a lot of the countries and a lot of some of the world leaders. And so that's why I say April looks like it's going to be a very just volatile energy. Plus, it is around tax time for here, and it's affecting the chart of the Affordable Care Act as well. So there's a lot going on. I think it's going to be in the news at that time. On a personal level, when we get into the second half, again, the eclipse is behind us. Those retrogrades are pretty much behind us. Jupiter is in Cancer right now. And so it's been bringing, we like to say it's abundance to those born under the sign of Cancer. It's going to change signs, and it's going to move into Leo. And Jupiter in Leo is a very different energy than Jupiter in Cancer. You know, Jupiter in Cancer is about security. It's about nurturing, you know, and when it's going into...
How long was it in Cancer?
It went in... I believe it was the very beginning of the end of June of 2012. I don't remember the exact date.
So over a year.
It's a year. It spends a year. Jupiter spends a year in each sign. And so it's going to be going into Leo. Totally different energy. Jupiter in Leo, you're expanding its creative self-expression. You know, Leo is very confident. The key phrase for it is, I will. And so just the general energy of Jupiter in Leo, I think, is going to create a shift, not just for the people who are born under Leo and are going to enjoy it, but as well as just for everyone. It's just a much lighter energy. Because like I say, Cancer, it's a wonderful sign, but it's more about nurturing and security. And when we talk about security, like we talk about emotional security, but the key is this. To be emotionally secure, I think most of us have to be financially secure. So you've got the security issue where Jupiter in Leo is just much more playful than Jupiter was in Cancer. So Jupiter will actually be going into Leo on July 16th, and it will spend a year in that very outgoing and at times extravagant sign. And that I think is going to be just a really it's just a much lighthearted energy. And playful is the word I'm going to use for it.
But playful's good. I mean,
yeah.
You know,
I
when
think
we
we're due
play,
for it.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, because when we play and when we laugh, it allows energy that we've been holding on to release and let go. So, I mean, that's good. I like play.
Oh, we need play. And that's what I think. I think most of, you know, the nation, I think we're ready for it. We've had, you know, like I said, all these, you know, these really heavy headlines. It's time to see something new, to have fun, you know, maybe Jupiter in Leo, because it's about entertainment, and so maybe there'll be some kind of I'm not going to say so much a new medium, but that maybe there'll just be some better movies out, or just more fun, or something new to do, because we could use some good movies out there. You know, I really haven't seen anything that good in a while.
I don't know. Thor was pretty good. You know, the important thing.
Yes, I have to see that.
Well, it's just, you know, it's not about the movie. No.
Okay. All right. Listen, I will take your word for that and put that on my I will put it on my list to check that out. And again, you know, I always say on a personal level, it does depend, but generally speaking, I do want to say, you know, Pluto is in Capricorn. The Virgos, the Taurians benefit from that. You know, the Capricorns do to an extent. Jupiter's in Cancer, so the Cancers are doing very well. So Pisces, so is Scorpio. The Scorpios are getting it a little bit from Saturn, but, you know, we all pay our dues. We all have to go through that growth period. And Jupiter going into Leo will be very good for the Leos, the Sagittarians, the Aries. And again, Uranus and Aries. You're a Sagittarian, you're a Leo. It's very, very helpful now. It's very liberating. And even if you're an Aries, it's bringing excitement and change into your life. And Aries, they're always up for that.
Well, I get like a double good thing then. I go from a double bad thing to a double good thing.
Well, that's wonderful. Neptune is in Pisces, so I'm just going to say the Pisces, the Cancers, the Scorpios, those born within the first 10 days or so of the sign, are getting some nice energy from Neptune, this year. And we all have our turn. I always say we all have our turn on the wheel. We're up and then we're down. Sometimes if we're lucky, we have a good energy going at the same time. We have a tougher one, but it really does depend. It does depend on your chart how you handle the energies that are going on, because it just depends on what they're connecting to in your particular birth chart.
Well, on that note, let's go take a break, and when we come back. And everybody hang around, because this is the juicy part. We're going to get into, government and politics and, what's going on in the political arena and all that good stuff. So I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're here talking to Debra Clement. Her website is anchoredinastrology.com. And we'll be back with Deborah after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.